Welcome to Valor and Virtue. I'm Jim Danielson. Today we have with us Colonel Tim Howard, United States Marine Corps retired. And we'd like to ask you, Colonel, to tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you to become a Marine.
Okay, well, as we had talked previously before we started recording, all of my family was Army. My mother's one of 5 sisters. 4 of her sisters, herself and 4 sisters, married soldiers. And they ran the gambit. Had one officer who flew helicopters in Vietnam. My dad was retired lieutenant colonel. My uncle Bo, who was a former Marine, a PFC on Okinawa in World War II, and he and I were pretty tight. He's retired lieutenant colonel in the Army because he got rifted after the war. So anyway, the service was a pretty natural progression for me. I started off trying to go into the Army, frankly, and because obviously my background was all Army, and they said, okay, well, we don't, you got a 4-year degree, we don't do officers, we do warrant officers. And I said, I know the pay scale, and it seems to me like I ought to maybe go somewhere else where they'd have officers fly helicopters. And okay, you're going to the Marine Corps. Oh, okay. So that was my decision maker. Basically, did I want to be a warrant officer? Of course, the warrant officers in the Army at the time, I don't know if they are now, were not even commissioned. They were, our officers, our warrant officers in the Marine Corps have always been commissioned officers. The Army didn't have that. So I said, number 1, I want to be a commissioned officer. Number 2, I want to be, a lieutenant or a captain or a major or a colonel, not a CWO 1 or 2. So that's how I came to the Marine Corps.
So you were already flying helicopters?
No. I had an uncle, Chief Warrant Officer 4, who's passed on, but he flew basically the Army's version of the CH-46. They didn't call it that, but they had the twin rotors. He flew that in Vietnam. And so I kind of gravitated toward that excitement of being an aviator.
So where did you start out?
As far as
a Marine officer?
Okay, well, obviously I went to OCS in Quantico, November 77. It was pretty damn cold. For a guy coming from Florida, I wasn't used to that, especially when we do our hikes, in the snow. It was like, whoa, this is different. So started off there, of course, and then went to the Big Suck, TBS. 2 weeks of training crammed into 13 weeks. And then from there, I went to flight school.
One of the things that sort of animates us here, the Marine Corps has these, we call them the values of honor, courage, and commitment. They're virtues, is what they are. And we talk about how people reflecting on how you think you developed as an individual, as a human being, from being a Marine.
Couple of things. Number 1, I support those virtues. Obviously, in fact, we had them on T-shirts and things like that, and Paris Island, that got hammered into the guys and all that. Some of the things that happened to me personally was I got very good training. Now, I'm not going to lie, there have been people that I've served that I was subordinate to that weren't my favorite people, but that's the luck of the draw. Sure. By and large, I've loved being a Marine. I've loved being around the Marines. And although, I've sent guys to jail, but, by and large, at the 99.9%, I never felt like, gosh, I wish I wasn't a Marine. I wish I was something else. In fact, when I had 2nd Intel Battalion at Camp Lejeune, I had them from 99 to 2001, we get these joint training things come up. And I would always send a couple guys. And I'd say, there's 2 reasons I'm sending you guys. 1, I expect you to do well, and we did well every time. Every time, not just once or twice, every time, top 10% of the class, top 3, whatever. But I want you to come back and talk to your fellow Marines about how we're different. We're different. We look at things differently. We approach things differently. Ray Smith, retired Major General, was the battalion commander for the infantry in Grenada. And I think he lives here. I haven't seen him in years, but I think he lives here. If he's still alive, I don't know. But he used to tell me, he'd say, Skipper, the Marine Corps thinks we're different. And you know what? We are. And so we don't just think it, we believe it, and we show it when we can, which is pretty much every day for most of us. So that's something I'm quite proud of. And I was very, very proud of my Marines my whole career. As I say, I put some in jail, but they were the abstractions. They weren't the norm. I also had guys that did great. I had a mess sergeant who ran the mess for one of the UFLs, ultra-focus lens in Korea, got a Navy comm. Everybody liked him so much. He did such a great job and had coffee at 3 a.m. and the food was good and it was always hot. And you know, after about 20 days, people really appreciate that kind of thing.
Right.
We didn't have no, you know, chocolate syrup dispensers or anything like that, but just had good hot coffee and good hot chow. That works for most Marines.
Well, now listening to you talk about that, I'm put in mind of something that I've always heard about, but I must confess to you, never understood in a detailed way, and that's the idea of esprit de corps.
Yeah, you know, a lot of generals talk about this, a lot of commandants talk about this, a lot of officers talk about this. The Marine Corps is a different animal, and we're not just in the Marine Corps, we're of the Marine Corps. I have known Marines of every MOS, every age, every rank, and I associate with every single one of them. Now, obviously, the association is not the same thing. How I associate with a major general is not the same way I associate with a PFC. I'll give you an example. When I had second MARDIV, I had second MARDIV under General Blackman for 2 years. I promoted a Lance Corporal. That Lance Corporal is a retired Master Sergeant living out in Stella now. And
wow.
I see him every now and then, you know, and I still have guys say, "Hey, sir, you're the best guy we ever had, and really appreciate it. And, you know, you gave me another chance." Several times you gave him another chance. You hammered him, but you didn't destroy him, and you gave him another chance. That was my personal thing as a CO. I was a CO 3 times. When I bring guys in for office hours, the first couple of times the company commanders or maybe the first sergeant would say, "Hey, sir, you got to go easy on this one." Yes, whoa. That's not how it works, guys. He's had the platoon sergeant. He's had the platoon commander. He's had the first sergeant. He's had the company commander. I'm not the start of the road. I'm the end of the road. Okay. So what I would do, everybody has a style. My style was, okay, you could do 3 things as a battalion commander. You could restrict them, you could take half their pay, or you could cause them a strike. Up until sergeant. After that, staff sergeant, you had to refer up to higher boards. So what I would do is I would restrict them to the barracks, even if they lived in town with their wives and kids, and restrict them to, you know, place of worship, PX, that kind of stuff. I'd take half their pay for 2 months and their rank, but I would suspend those 2. Okay, so they didn't lose their rank and they didn't lose their pay. I said, if you come back here within 6 months, we start you at a pay grade lower, and the first thing happens is you lose 2 months of pay, half for 2 months. And I had probably, I don't know, not a great number of guys, probably 4 or 5 guys during my career, because I had commanded 3 times, that came back to me later and said, "Hey, you know, that was the wake-up call." And most of them retired as very senior enlisted. I think at least gunny, several of them master sergeants and sergeant majors. So that was one of those, well, okay, that philosophy turned out all right for me.
Yeah, that's, you know, it's very interesting, but it also puts us in mind of something that we've talked about with a number of people, and you obviously have a lot of experience with Parris Island.
Mm-hmm.
Young people just starting out, this is actually a question, young people just starting out really, you know, need, and this is what we'd like you to talk about, that confidence boost that comes from a challenge that you overcome.
Well, as we know in Parris Island, we start them off like 3 o'clock in the morning. We want them disoriented and all that. Now, I wasn't a DI. I wasn't in the numbered battalions. Weapons battalions was the rifle ranges and the crucible and the gas chamber and the rappel tower and all that kind of stuff. Confidence course, that kind of stuff. Yeah, we bring them in, and you're absolutely right. The theory is you get them a little bit nervous. Okay, they don't know what's going on. You keep them off balance for a while, and then you start building them, building their character, building their poise, building their confidence. And by the time those guys leave Parris Island, you know, other services give them 2 or 3 ribbons, right? You get out of some services, you get a hand grenade throwing ribbon, you get a service ribbon, you walk in as your new unit as a private or PFC, you got 3 ribbons on your chest. People always ask me, what are you getting ready for? We give them because that's the personification of what they've achieved. They've become a Marine. They've done something extremely difficult and extremely important for the rest of their lives, whether they do 1 tour or 14. This is who they are. Pretty proud of that.
Yeah. Well, I, from an officer's perspective, well, I don't know if you've noticed, I thought that drill instructors were funny.
Well, they weren't funny to the recruits. When the guy's rolling the trash can down the squad bay at 5 o'clock in the morning, they don't see much humor in that.
No, I get you. Well, it was funny when they were doing it to somebody else.
Well, yeah. Then it's like, oh God. But you know how that happens. I broke that code pretty quick in OCS. These two guys are getting hammered this week. That means either they're completely screwed up or this is the way the game is played. You figure out after a couple of weeks, my turn's coming. My turn's just let it go. Make sure you do the best you can. They're going to yell at you. Get through it and succeed. Persevere and succeed. And that's basically what the training was. Because I mean, physically we could all do it. If we couldn't do it all when we started, by the time we finished, we certainly could.
Right.
And I was a high school athlete, so and before I recruited. My recruiter said, okay, you got to run 3 miles, you got to do this, you got to do that. And so I started training. I started doing pull-ups and sit-ups and running 1.5 miles and then 2 miles. So when I walked in there, I was able, nobody had to say, oh, this turd. That turd, that's a Marine acronym for troop under repeated discipline. So at least this guy has the physical part. We don't need to beat him up about that.
So, but there is like a constant, I'm not sure how to describe it, mental, emotional pressure.
Yes.
Which seems like that is more draining over time than the physical.
I agree, but it's purposeful. We've been doing this for over 200 years, actually, more like 250, getting close to 250. And, we don't do anything just because it's fun or we think it'd be kind of cool or we're narcissistic or whatever, although, we all know a couple of DIs that they have had to go back to the fleet because they forgot they were DIs and not gods. I mean, that happened. That does happen. That's a fact of life. But you put 400 people together to do something and give them responsibility and authority, not all 400 of them are going to shine. I mean, that's just the luck of the draw.
Sure. So,
but, in the Marine Corps case, we probably do 395, which is not bad.
No, that's definitely not bad. I have a son who's in the Army. And,
okay.
He was recently at combat dive school.
Oh.
And he said there were a lot of Marines down there.
Yes.
I said, what did you think of them? And he said, this is what he said to me, which I thought was so interesting. He said, I wish we were that squared away.
Yeah. That's because he has a Marine for a father too. So I mean, he's been arguably exposed to a set of values that maybe he wasn't exposed to in the Army. I'm not knocking the Army. All my cousins were Army. I don't play that game. I just, the services are different. The major difference between the Army and the Marine Corps, from my perspective, is the Army thinks of combat in terms of corps and armies. We don't even begin to start thinking about combat until, we have divisions, not division, divisions of guys. And we want to build massive juggernaut of power and then go forward. The Marine Corps is exactly the opposite. We're a building block combat pro. We go out with a MEU. We establish a beachhead. We bring in with a MEB. We get going with the MEB, then finally the MEF, and then that's our biggest unit. Basically, a MEF is basically an army. Okay, and so that really drives a lot of our decisions. If you want this capability here instead of here, you got to put it here. And the Army likes to put it all up here. I remember once when I had first remotely piloted vehicle company, we were talking about the communications relay package with Major General somebody at Augusta, Georgia, Fort Gordon. That's the Army's comm, school, fort, whatever. And he said, yeah, I want to be able to change frequencies. And I said, well, yes, sir, that'll be part of the package. The guys doing the mission will be able to change frequencies if they need to talk to other people. He says, no, I want to be able to change frequencies. I'm thinking, a major general wants to change the frequencies? I mean, I was thinking, some corporal down in a CP where the boss says, hey, we need to go to this frequency because the comm guy said that'd be a better VHF frequency to talk to these guys who are doing photo observation or whatever. The real, they're in the game. A major general doing that. So, but that's the way they think. And again, this is not, the difference is when the nation commits the Army, the nation commits the Army. When the nation commits the Marine Corps, I'm not trying to hurt anybody's feelings, but it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. We're supposed to get in, establish, and get out. The Army, how long did they stay in Europe after World War II? How long have they stayed in Korea after the Korean War? Sure. They just stay. But again, it's a different commission by a different commitment by the nation. That's my opinion. Again, right, wrong, or indifferent. That's what I've learned over the years.
Well, of course, the Army is what, 4 or 5 times bigger than the Marine Corps?
Oh, at least. I remember for a while there we got pretty big during the Gulf stuff, Iran, Iraq and Afghanistan. But we winnowed down pretty quickly after that. I think we got to be over, 220,000 or something like that for a while. And then we went back to like 180 or I don't even know where we are anymore. I'm a little concerned about some of the decisions that have been made about the Marine Corps, but I try not to be that guy. Majors and master sergeants are studying the problem and they're making decisions and they're doing recommendations to their generals, and their generals are either implementing them or implementing some of them or whatever. And I'm just going to go with that because I've seen too many guys agonize over too many things. Like the 46 guys got, oh my God, when the Osprey started coming out. Right. What have we done to ourselves? We're going to die and this kind of thing. And it's just, I did a speech one time at Weapons Battalion at Paris Island, and had a bunch of older, retired Marines or former Marines or whatever you want to call them in the audience. And I got through the speech, and part of the speech was that training today is better than it's ever been. One guy got, pretty irate about that and wrote me a personal letter. Said, Colonel, we were tougher and blah, 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 in World War II. Blah, blah, blah. I said, I think you kind of missed the point here. If we trained everybody the same way we trained them forever, then you'd be wearing a leather collar and I would have a sword.
That's right.
Okay? So it has to progress. That's the whole idea of the thing. So the training that we do is based on the necessity to make better Marines. And a better Marine in 1942 is not the same thing as a better Marine in, at the time, 2001. It's not the same guy. He's still a Marine. He still has the esprit de corps. He still has the commitment, the honor, and the courage, but he's not the same guy. He doesn't shoot the same weapon. He doesn't wear the same uniform. He doesn't have the same tactical advantages or disadvantages. He has different comm gear. He has different trucks. Everything's different. So the training has to incorporate those differences. If we don't do that, we're doing a disservice to the Marines.
Right. That makes perfectly good sense. And yet they're all still human beings.
Oh, I'm with you.
Right. And this is sort of where we're going with this from the point of view of the Civic Institute. They go back to society.
Yes.
And what would you say if they go back to the society fit to be proper citizens, members of the community, participating in their society, maybe even being an example to others?
That gets into there's no such thing as an ex-Marine.
There's
former.
Sure.
The only ex-Marines are the guys we shit-canned.
Right.
Those are ex-Marines, okay? The other guys are former Marines, okay? Or they're still Marines, they're just no longer active. I'm still a Marine at heart. I don't do wacky stuff just because I either can or I'm a civilian or whatever. No, there's a code I'm expected to uplive. I remember once I had and this happened several times. Again, as a commander, you see some things maybe some other guys don't see, but I'd have somebody come in, maybe a corporal, maybe a sergeant, come into my office. He's get out of the Marine Corps. Get out of the Marine Corps. And I'd say, you got a job lined up, and that kind of stuff. And he said, yes, sir. I said, well, you got anything, thanks for your service. On behalf of the president, I thank you, which was, I was allowed to do that. And many times they'd say, wow, sir, this is really different from what I've been exposed to. What do you mean? Well, the first sergeant and the company commander and all those guys told me what an asshole I was for leaving and all that kind of stuff. And I said, no, I don't agree with that philosophy. You're not quitting. You're just moving toward a different direction. And frankly, those guys, those one-termers, do more recruiting for the Marine Corps than all the recruiters in the world ever did. Because they'll go back to Arkansas or Alabama or New Jersey or wherever, and they'll be having a beer with their friends and talking about, how great it was to be a Marine, how good they felt. And some of those guys will go join the Marine Corps. I've always thought that it was counterproductive to beat a guy up because he was ready to do something else in his life. As you say, they're human beings. Everybody has different goals and whatever. We had one guy flying Cobras with us that did one hitch, and then he went down to Miami and became a lawyer because his dad was a lawyer and he was going to be in the firm and all that. Okay, good, great. Thanks for your service for 4 years. Appreciate it. Now be a good lawyer.
Yes.
If there is such a thing. I'm kidding.
That's right. Well, this is a final question. You can ask the question, but then when you try to reason through the question, you wonder if it's a coherent question. But here it is anyway. What, if anything, do you think the Marine Corps and the virtues of the Marine Corps, the discipline of the Marine Corps, has to say to those of our countrymen who are suffering from a sense of meaninglessness in life, that they see around them a world that has nothing going for it?
I hear you. I mean, and basically downtrodden people are downtrodden people, and there are a multiplicity of reasons they could be that way. Some of them are social economic, some of them are ethical, some of them are cultural, some of them are, not to say any of the ethnicities or all that are all that way. Every ethnicity has people of different kinds. Every ethnicity has people that are super achievers and people that are non-achievers. I am reminded of Reagan's comment. He was giving a speech, it may have been here, probably DC, and he said something like, many people in their lives search for answers and wonder if they've made a difference. Marines don't have that problem. So I thought that was one of the better quotes for the Marine Corps.
Well, that's a great place to stop. Colonel Tim Howard, we thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Enjoyed it.